An idea is a creation. An idea is a dream, right? I'm terrible. I'm not worthy of love. It's a dream that you give life. And if you dream it again and again and again, you give your energy to it. You feed it. And it becomes alive. And then it wants to stay alive. And it wants to live. And it wants to dream you. And it wants to be fed. And an idea wants to be spread.
Yeah.
From me to you to others. So right now, like the dream of the planet, the majority of people are being dreamt by a dream of fears. And when you start shedding that dream of fear that's been dreaming you, you don't have to learn to love. Because again, it's where you came from. It's love is a force that is here, that's created everything. And that is inside of you.
Hi, welcome. I am Anders, and today we're going to talk about our inner life, I think, mainly at least, the human predicament. I am happy to introduce to you Eva Beronius. Welcome to the show, Eva.
Thank you so much, Anders. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. You are a transformational teacher. That's what you call yourself, as far as I understand. And
yeah.
So you guide people to having a less stressful and more healthy, more harmonious relationship with themselves. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say. And then it goes a little deeper, but that's a good starting point. It's usually where people start and then they get more than they wished for.
Than they asked for.
Yes.
Well, can be wonderful. Can be a problem sometimes as well.
Yeah.
You created a training community called Self-Mastery. Is that right?
Embodied self-mastery community. Yes.
So
I add that word of embodied.
What does that entail, having this community? And what is self-mastery?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big questions, right? Yeah, for me, self-mastery is usually something else than what people usually think of when they hear that word. And I actually received like a comment today on Instagram, another self-mastery coach saying, yeah, that's exactly what it is. How we're able to manage and control our emotions and our thoughts. And that's the common, I think, belief about what self-mastery is.
Yeah.
For me, self-mastery goes deeper than that. And we think we want to control our thoughts and emotions. And for me, that's coming from what I would call like a protector part of us, of our ego mind, that says these thoughts and emotions they are a problem. They are what is causing me suffering, so we need to change them. But usually, what we need to do is to embrace them and to meet with them. What we've been so scared of. So for me, self-mastery is less about control. And when I say mastery, I think of like the skillful artist. Someone who masters an instrument, someone who masters the piano or or a scientist that masters something. It's about practice so that you can play the instrument. So for me, it's about artistry. And I talk about it in that way of like being here, being human. There's so much that I did not learn growing up about being human. Just from being with my emotions or what to do with my thoughts, but also more than that, like the consciousness that lives in us, the consciousness that lives in different parts of us, of the body and beyond the body. So it's like, how can we play the instrument of our human? That's how I look at self-mastery.
Beautiful. I mean, maybe the word mastery is kind of a problem when people are trying to interpret it, because we equate mastery with control. But as you say, our need for control is the problem.
Yes.
More or less.
And if you kind of remove that need of control, then mastery becomes something else. So yes, the words are always tricky, right? And I think we'll see that many times during this conversation maybe. But I mean, we always interpret words from our own filter of beliefs, right?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
So what's the community about?
So there is a community where my work lives, basically. My courses, my program. So it's an online community where you can come in and be a member and do the work, just listen to the podcast. So it's completely free to be part of it. And then you can join a course or a program or do private coaching or mentoring with me as well. So it's a home. It's a home for the work.
Do you have any associates? You used to, didn't
Yes,
you?
yes. I do have co-founded the self-mastery community, and now I've decided to create like a sister community that is even more focused on the embodied work. So these two communities are sister communities. We still do work together. Yeah.
What is it that we in the modern world, the modern society, do the most wrong when it comes to this? What's the big problem in our modern hectic lives? You have touched on it, but
Yeah, it's, even here with the words right or wrong, right? We tend to get stuck in a trap.
where do we go astray?
If we want to look at what causes the most suffering, then I would say it's that we believe lies.
From whom? From ourselves?
Yes, from ourselves. Because that's the most important person that you're truthful with. If you believe lies inside of yourself, meaning the stories that your mind is telling, and of course, these stories are coming from unconscious beliefs or just repetition and habits. It's coming from conditioning from society, it's coming from emotional conditioning growing up. A lot of it is coming from wanting to avoid certain emotions, wanting to avoid pain, hurt, certain experiences again and again. And when we believe those lies inside of us, I mean, they're alive inside of us. That's what causes the most problem. It's not until you can take apart and stop putting faith in the lies inside of you that you can actually question lies from outside as well.
So how do you do that? How can we fix this illusion of all these lies that we're believing?
As I know that you're aware of, and I mean, it's a process, right?
Yeah.
So it starts with self-awareness. And the most crucial point, I think, for the most crucial key for self-awareness is to understand that your attention is a force, a superpower. We tend to be so kind of jumbled up as a being. We think this is the I, this is me, and I think this, and I believe this, and I have this opinion, or I prefer this and not that. But there's so much more complexity to us. Like understanding your attention as a force that you can direct anywhere, on your outer world, in your inner world, on a specific thought, on a specific belief, on a specific experience, emotion. When you start understanding this, that the attention is a force, I sometimes talk about it as if you're the sun and the attention is the sun ray being directed somewhere on the earth, right? It's the same thing with the force of your attention. It's almost like things appear when you direct your attention onto them. Like I can sit here and not be so aware that of my left foot, right? It's like it's still here, but I don't really experience it until I
put my attention to it. Yeah.
Yes, drop my attention there. And when you start to really, really experience the power in this, that your attention is a force, now you can start using it, right? Now you can direct it onto certain thoughts and patterns and beliefs that you have and start meeting with them and question them. I mean, basically question your bullshit, right? Really be willing to meet with what's in there.
Some of the bullshit you might think that you actually appreciate or even love.
Oh, yeah.
And that you don't want to get rid of it.
Yes.
Until you do.
Yes. That's usually how it starts. You know, you set out and thinking, this corner of my mind is what's the problem. Like this corner causing these reactions or these behaviors. That's what I need to fix. But the more you exercise this muscle of self-awareness, you start seeing more and more, right? It's like that room of your inner world starts opening up for you and it starts getting illuminated more and more. So now you might even find that, oh, the part of me that I set out with on this journey that wanted to fix and change things, is also part of the problem.
Yeah.
Depending on how deep you want to go into, that rabbit hole.
And
right?
do you do that by way of meditating or other kinds of practices, or how do you do this?
Yeah, it's different kinds of practices. So one of the most important piece, if you come to this work, like and you haven't done any self-awareness work before, I think it's journaling, to writing, to write and to write in third person.
Okay, why is that?
Well, imagine what happens if you write in first person and you say, I did this and I thought this and I met this person and I believed this. I had this reaction. Versus if you write, Anders walked down the street, he met with an old colleague, and he had this reaction. Now when you go back and read that, you can observe it.
And you don't judge yourself.
Maybe you do, but at least you're observing it like that version of Anders at that point in time had this reaction. And now you can start looking at I use that a lot. Like I work with characters or inner sub-personalities, archetypes, you could call them.
Yeah.
As a way to dismantle and take apart like the construction of your mind, the program of your mind. So, okay, that's a judge in there, or that's a victim, or that's a princess, or a prostitute, or a hero, fixer. Who was it that had that reaction? Because now we can start meeting that part of us from a different consciousness with loving awareness. And as you set out on that journey of trying to meet it with a loving awareness, you will see all the other sub-personalities that has opinions about that part, right? That shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't have had that reaction. Why did I do that? Why did I think that? Oh, that's another part, having an opinion. So this is the beginning of self-awareness and what, the Toltecs that we might talk about a little more later would call the hunting phase. When you go from being a victim to your own program, when you go from being dreamt by this dream of your mind and you start hunting, stalking what that program is made up of. And then there are other phases.
Wonderful. Inspired perhaps also a little bit by Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell.
Yes, very much so. Very much going on a hero's journey, as Campbell would describe, and very much the Jungian archetypes are in there as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Energy flows where attention goes.
Yes.
That's a good saying.
Yes.
And what about, this is also Jungian in a way. It all ties together, it goes together. Embracing what is often referred to as different types of energies, interpreted as feminine and masculine. So embracing the feminine energy and the masculine also. What about those kinds of, those are also archetypes. Do you work a lot with those, and what are they, and what's, are we good or bad at embracing those energies and realizing that they're there, and just using them, utilizing them for our own good? Yeah.
I think me 10 years ago would even have cringed at, using those words, because it's almost like a stigma or something that we don't talk about in our society in that way.
Because everybody's the same.
Yes, we should be. We should be the same. Yeah, and we are the same in so many ways. We truly are. But when we talk about the feminine and the masculine energies, or we can talk about them as archetypes, it exists in all of us, right? No matter gender. For me, it's part of the manifest side of consciousness, we could call it. I tend to experience the world as the manifest side of consciousness. There's an unmanifest side of consciousness, which is that endless field of full potential.
Yes.
Where nothing, it's a no thing, where everything can appear from. And here we are in a manifest side of consciousness where things are created. We experience matter and thoughts. And I look at you and it looks like I see a person over here.
It appears as if there is an
yes,
entity sitting here on the other side of the table.
Exactly. Although it also seemed to be happening more inside of me than outside of me. But that's another thread. So
we can come back to that maybe.
Yeah. But in that manifest side of consciousness, I tend to find like the feminine and masculine energies, or we can talk about them as yin and yang. And this is again where words are going to be tricky because we're going to apply our own meaning and assumptions to them, associations. But they are elements that make up this world for me. And not until I started having the experience of them could I start using these words. Because before it was like, what are they? So when on my own journey, I started to have the experience of the energies of the feminine and the masculine and how they are different. That's when I started working more with them. And we can talk about them as archetypes, but it also tend to put the focus almost like it's something that we need to learn. And for me, it's not. It's there. It's in us naturally.
Yeah.
And it's more when we take things apart or, shed the fog around it that we start to experience it.
That's like with all inner work, isn't it? I mean, it's about taking away layers of
confusion and fog and programming.
Because it's all there from the start.
Yes, those are the lies that I talked about in the beginning. So then you end up with something else.
So how much does it have to do with women and men? Are women better at embracing and finding their feminine energy, or better at finding both of these kinds of energies, also the masculine? And are men worse at even considering that they even have feminine energy within them, for instance?
Yeah, I think that has to do with cultural programming, right? What is okay for our ego to consider?
Yeah.
What is our ego willing to consider about myself? And what am I willing to let go of what I believe about myself? But I think there's gender on one side, which is more like physiology and energetic setup. For me, energetic setup, like in a male body and in a female body, the energy travels differently. It has a different polarity, you can call it. And that's something that I experience directly. But then there is the feminine and the masculine energies, the yin and the yang, which exists in all of us, right? So in the female body, or in however you identify, right? Whatever gender or genderless you identify, there is that energy of the feminine, which is more inward. It's feeling your emotions. It's sensuality, meaning sensing with your senses, and
nurturing
and receiving. Yeah. I actually talk less about the nurture, like the out in the world thing. Like for me, it's, yes, the nurturing is there, but it's also death and destruction, right? In the feminine energy. It's Kali. It's not just this nurturing mother that, takes care of everything. Yeah, that's there, but it's all of life.
Yeah.
The feminine is all of life.
What puts people off sometimes is that it's often described as positive and negative. So masculine is positive, and feminine is negative. But it's all about, I mean, as you say, in and out, yin and yang, it all goes together. You can't have the one without the other. But people tend to, because positive is good and negative is bad.
Yeah.
So again, that's a problem.
The trick of the words and our associations with it.
So you need to feel in. You need to really experience it to understand what it really is, I guess.
Yeah, if you want to. If you want to.
Yeah.
There needs to be a motivation and a willingness or a longing, right, to experience it. But in my work, I talk about the masculine and the feminine energies as a way that you can really deepen and build a different relationship with your inner world. if we talk about the masculine energy as awareness itself, as almost the more the no thing, and if we go here into this world a little more, it's more about structures. It's this table, it's this room that we're sitting in, and it's the space. And the feminine is the life in it. It's our conversation here. It's what we feel in here. It's what we fill the room with. So imagine now that often we have this conflicted relationship inside of us between our feminine and our masculine. Our masculine, in the sense, is very much part of the mind and the ego mind that has formed protection around certain painful events. And it has done that in a way often of turning away from the feeling sense inside of us. So like, no, don't look there, because we don't want to feel that way again. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
So go out in the world, or avoid it, or distract from it, or whatever it is. And the feminine in many of us is very immature as well. It's in a state of overwhelmed with emotion, just flooding the space and pointing fingers and blaming. This made me feel that way, and you made me feel that way, and don't ever do that again, because I don't want to feel that way again. So they're both in an immature state inside of us.
Can be.
Yeah. In a majority of people that I meet with, it's very much
those who come to you for for help.
Yes. So and naturally so, because we haven't learned in our culture, in our society, to have a different relationship. So when that can start maturing, when they are now dancing together and supporting each other, and when both of them can mature internally, there's a very different expression. Now the masculine awareness can hold space for what you're feeling. So it can hold space for healing. And then later on, it will start supporting more and more of that sense of aliveness inside of you, right? Once there's not so much healing left to do, it's also about experiencing life, right? And when we cut ourselves off from what's painful, we also cut ourselves off from what's joyful and what's alive in us, our sense of aliveness.
Wonderful. I mean, it's fascinating that we are all of that inside of us, and it's obvious when you start reflecting on about your inner life. I mean, we are. I have the feminine, the masculine. I have all these, as you say, there's a chatter going on between different avatars within me. It's like when you're dreaming, you dream up a whole world of people doing things, and then when you wake up, you have this sense that you are the one dream character. But when you think about it, you have created all of these characters
exactly
in your dream, which I never thought of until just a few years ago. And it's just like, of course, they're all me.
Yes,
it's obvious when you think about it.
So who are you then?
Who are you? Who am I? I'm all of it.
I
just as you say, you decide to be something, and then maybe that's a lie. So what about sexuality in this context? Before we leave the masculine and feminine thing, are we? I mean, it seems as if in the Western society, modern society, we talk a lot about sex and sexuality, but maybe on a shallow level, superficial level. Maybe we don't talk about it the right way, because that's also, I don't know if we call it an archetype, but it's an energy. It's the force, of course.
Yes.
Do we utilize that force in the right way, or can we learn to harness it in a better way?
Yeah.
And what would that entail in that case?
I mean,
having more sex, or I guess that's a very superficial answer.
Yeah, for me, the sexual energy, like one of the most important pieces in working with that is to understand and have the experience that it's there for you. We tend to give it away or work with it as, performance anxiety or something that I need to do for someone else. Am I doing it right? Am I good enough? Am I sexy enough? Am I, all of this. So again, it's a product. How we relate to our sexuality is a consequence of how we relate to ourselves and again, the mind and identity and how we're relating to others. When you shed that more and more, And if you go on this journey because you are curious about it, then you might start experiencing sexual energy as very much like you described, a force, and that it's everywhere in the universe. I tend to say that we live in an orgasmic universe.
Well, that's a great way of seeing it.
I mean, it's thermonuclear reactions in the sun.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what is that?
The Big Bang.
What is that? The Big Bang. What is that?
If not an orgasm.
Yes. And everywhere, in every moment, in every point in creation, there's like light, coming out in all directions. For me, that is what we're created from, right? We're all created from sex. We became babies.
The avatars that we are.
Yes, the avatars.
Maybe not the essence of us. I don't know.
But these humans that we're here as. So the humans are sexual in that sense. We were created from that force and it's alive inside of us. What I tend to see in our society is that it's been made and put into a box that's very small. It's something that happens on Saturdays in the bedroom, or whatever it is. And it's something that happens with others. But your sexual energy is something that is alive in you. It's also your creative energy. And I talk about it as turnal. Like, what are you turned on about? Meaning, what do you long for? What do you desire? What do you feel alive and a yes towards? So this is more when you've stepped out of that I talked about, these phases from victim to hunter-stalker. Now you can become the dreamer and you can become the artist. So the dreamer will start having a different experience than it had before. Instead of being dreamt, you become the conscious dreamer. Yeah. You start creating your own dream. You start deciding, no, I want to put my attention more on these experiences or these emotions or whatever it is. And you start having a different experience of life. So it's the same thing now with your sexual energy. Now you can start experiencing it differently as a force that's there with you for you to be kind of guided by towards what you feel called towards, what brings up passion in you, what is a yes, instead of what the old program of your ego mind had an idea about what you should be doing or should be liking or should be wanting. Now you're guided by life itself.
Yeah, that's a very wise way of looking at sexuality and everything else in this fascinating life. You have a new program called Fembodiment.
Yes.
You just started it, or you haven't even started it?
We haven't started yet. The doors are open and we start.
And I guess it's a play on words with the words feminine and embodiment.
Yes.
But is it also for men, or is it?
It is for men or for anyone identifying in any way.
So what is it about? Is it about feminine, embody the feminine?
It's about embodying the feminine energy and really having the experience. I say, like, this is not another course where we sit down and learn things. It's like activating that, shedding the layers on top so that you can have the experience of what the feminine energy is inside of you, which is basically the life force, right? What everything is made up of. And so it is destruction and tearing things apart and mess and chaos. Can that become your ally? Maybe that's a force also guiding you when the mind says, well, this shouldn't be falling apart, or this person shouldn't leave me, or this shouldn't be happening to me. Well, maybe there's a wisdom in it, leaving and going. So like learning to embrace all these. And I think we've been so much in our masculine energy as a culture, as a society for a long
Since
time.
Many thousand years back,
many thousands of years. So there's a shift happening. And we all, I would use the word need to embrace our feminine more.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Do you think it's necessary to go through a so-called, or what is often called, dark night of the soul in order to reach self-mastery? Or Is it possible to go about in a different way? Maybe I suppose it has to do with what kind of person you are and what your
Yeah,
experiences
that
are.
path where it's only flowers and pleasure and enjoyment, that path.
Or just hard work and not a dark night of the soul, but a
Mm,
bit of hard work and then you're there. I don't know.
yeah,
Are there different paths,
yeah.
or is it an advantage to go through this dark night? Would you say? It sounds bad, but it's. I mean, as long as you can sense that there is
Yeah.
something good on the other side of it, you might be able. You might
Yeah.
want to.
You know that Rumi saying comes to mind, like wound is where the light enters, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like
That's a
your
nice one.
freedom and your
Yeah.
happiness, I think, is in proportion to how your willingness to meet with what hurts. And the dark night of the soul, I think, is also a bit of a construction from the mind again. The mind has created all these concepts around the spiritual journey or the awakening journey,
Yeah.
right? So, what is the dark night of the soul? It's actually, in a sense, a dark night of the ego.
Yeah, death of the ego.
Yes.
Yeah, because who has defined dark? Who defines dark? Who
Yeah.
defines night?
Yeah.
Who defines soul?
Yeah. And there is so many on this. Like, yes, you're gonna have to meet with an crisis of identity.
Mm.
If you're willing to really do this work and go deep, there's gonna be a crisis of identity. And that might feel very disorienting. It might feel like I don't know who I am. It might feel scary. It might feel like you're dying. And it's true. You are dying in the sense of like the old you, the identification with your ego is dying.
Mm.
And that can be very uncomfortable for the ego. But again, if you've done the work and you've learned the skills to unidentify with the ego, and you've seen it morph and change, from a victim and into a spiritual ego, uh, when you've learned about the ego mind, you can hold space for it doing its thing. You can hold space for that death. And you can be with the experience moving through your body, right? Of all the confusion and the fear and the, I'm going to die.
Mm.
Okay, this is an experience too. Be with this. It's an initiation. Be with this. It's a shamanic journey,
Yeah.
right?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I know you have this connection with Mexico.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about your own personal journey and your the Toltec, the Mexican connection, your journeys to this fantastic site north of Mexico City called Teotihuacán. I've been there myself many years ago, but it's just amazing.
Yes.
So what is it with that place and your life?
Yeah, coming to Teotihuacan for the first time was like coming home for me. And it was also where I had my first like awakening experience in a sense. I had started the self-mastery work about 8 months before I went to my first journey to Teotihuacan. So I had this awareness and I started really stalking and hunting my beliefs at this point. And it all came from necessity for me. It all came from suffering, right? I was suffering and I couldn't find, I'd been in therapy, I'd done stress management courses, I'd done meditation, I'd done yoga, all of it, it felt like. And still, felt like something was missing. Yeah, I'd been for most of my life. I'd been up and down in a dark place and then out of it with denial.
Mm.
And working really hard and accomplishing things and being
so that was your
super
default
ambitious.
Almost.
Yes.
To be not happy.
Very much so, without really knowing it, because I had a strong denial mechanism.
Mm.
I was like, no, I'm fine, I'm okay. That was my mantra. I'm fine, I'm okay.
I don't think you're alone in that.
No. It's a very common way of not having to deal with the pain, right? Not having to meet with the pain because it seems scary. So when I went on my first journey with what then was my teacher and that I later started working and teaching together with. His name is Gary Van Wormerdam, and he used to be an apprentice with Miguel Ruiz, the author of The Four Agreements and Mastery of Love, and a lot
Sounds
of
familiar. I haven't read it, but
yeah, no, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. He's written many books after that too. So he's come from a tradition of Toltecs. Toltec meaning artist. So again, we're there with that word, right?
And now, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're getting a deeper meaning of it.
I know that that's a much older culture than the Aztecs, and maybe not the Mayas, but well, could be
somewhere in between there. Yes.
So 2,000-3,000 years back. Something
so
like that.
Around 2,000 years ago, or earlier than that, they created the Teotihuacán as a spiritual university, as a place. And the word itself, Teotihuacán, means the place where men and women come to wake up from their dream and realize their divinity. So the whole place was structured, both energetically and physically, to take people through an awakening process. So that's what we do when we go there as well. Now that I take groups and people there.
You have retreats there?
Yes. So we go on power journeys, spiritual power journeys in October every year. And we take people through that process that the Toltecs did. And you know, if you go just visit, it's an amazing place, right?
It is.
And you can
feel the energy.
Yes.
Well, I was there in the 80s, so I have to go back, but I can still remember that it was.
It's alive.
Awesome.
Yes. But then if you listen to the guides, they'll, point at the murals and talk about things, and they don't go deep. But what we do is really taking people on that journey. So you start out in the Plaza of Hell and you meet with all your fears and everything you've been trying to avoid. And instead of living on that little island of safety that you built with your protection mechanisms, you really face with your fears and the pains and your whole creation, like you talked about. What is the dream that I've created? What is it? Can I look it in the eye? And can I also realize that I'm the one created it? So that means I have the power to take it apart, and I have the power to create something different. So we have processes and ceremonies. And
are you allowed to walk up on top of the pyramid of the sun, for instance, and the pyramid of the moon, and have ceremonies on top there? We
were allowed to. Everyone was allowed to walk up the pyramid of the sun until COVID. So when COVID hit, they closed down the whole site for a while, and after that, they haven't opened up the opportunity to go back up on the pyramid of the sun anymore.
It's too bad.
But that used to be a big part of the ceremony. But you can still do that ceremony. You don't have to be on top of the pyramid of the sun.
And there's the Way of the Dead, it's called, isn't it?
The Avenue of the Dead.
Avenue of the Dead.
Yes.
Going, passing those two pyramids, or arriving at the
Pyramid of the Moon.
Pyramid of the Moon, and you have the Pyramid of the Sun on one side.
Yes.
And then you have smaller structures all along.
Yes.
And some platforms and things also that where you can have ceremonies, I guess.
Exactly. And there are other places too, a little apart from that, because what you see when you visit Teotihuacán now is a small portion of the whole structure. So even when you think you're out of the grounds, you're still on the grounds. When you're out of the gates, you're still on the grounds. And they're like a very special place called Tititla, which is like the house of the masters, where the master called Smoky Mirror, who created Teotihuacán after sitting meditating in the cave that's now underneath the Pyramid of the Sun.
Yeah, they probably haven't excavated half of it.
No, there's a lot more. But there are caves under the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl that you, for example, can go into and things like that and visit. So.
Have you heard that this site can actually be much, much, much older than we're led to believe?
Yes.
Even older than the Toltecs?
Yes.
You know that?
Yes.
Because I believe personally that the Toltec probably came there and took it over and made it theirs.
Yes.
I think it was built a lot earlier. I don't know how many thousand years before that, but I mean, it could be incredibly old.
Yes, it is. It is incredibly old, and I don't think we will ever know. And the way that I've kind of received the transmission of Teotihuacán is through Miguel Ruiz, who went there, right, and dreamt it. And again, the Toltec art of dreaming. Now you can connect with that consciousness, and you can get that information of what was done there, or what happened there, of why it was built and the purpose of it.
Yeah.
So then coming through Gary, his apprentice, and to me, and then dreaming it and connecting with it, like Teotihuacán is very much alive inside of me. It's like an energy that's there.
Yeah. Fascinating.
But what is fascinating is also when they closed it off. Like they closed some of the caves and like 2,000 years back, when they know with the when there was invasion, and they know like, okay, we don't want people to find certain places.
Oh, yeah.
And they started closing it off. Like there are long tunnels that were just filled with artifacts and like it's we'll talk about that for 10 episodes.
Let's have another podcast just talk about these ancient Mexican and Mesoamerican sites. You know, I was in Peru in November, and I visited some of the fascinating sites there. So I'm really into this. I've been to, as I said, Teotihuacán, but I also visited some sites in Yucatan 2 years ago, and also I was in Uxmal, and I've been in Chichen Itza before that. It's all very fascinating, and you know that they are discovering so many more pyramids now with LiDAR technology, so they can see that underneath the foliage of the jungle, there are so many structures.
Exactly.
This is big, and it's old.
Yes,
it's really old.
It's very old, and it has so much wisdom for us to tap into. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So to kind of come back to your question, Teotihuacán became an important place for me, where I had experiences and where I just kept coming back, because it was a place to then shed more and more of the old programming. And
you've been back every year since how many years back?
Since it's 8-9 years now. Yeah. So except for 1 year during COVID when it was all closed. Yeah.
And you're going this fall as well?
Yes. Yeah, you should come with us.
I would love to. Yeah. Hopefully they will open up those pyramids.
Yeah. Again. But it's an amazing experience to just be there and take part of what it was built for, its purpose. Yeah. And it's so funny when you step in there, like it's like Teotihuacán is alive and it wants to play with you. It's like, ooh, someone's open. Let's do some work.
Cool. And this thing about dreaming up reality, as you have referred to many times here, it reminds me of the Aboriginals in Australia. I haven't been there, but I mean, there are books written about that.
Yeah,
they have these dream lines and dream. It's like, I mean, all these ancient cultures, they go together. They have the same mythology, the same legends, the same kinds of views up on life and how it all started and all that. It's so, and these Western historians and archaeologists, they just think it's fairy tales. It's ridiculous. I mean, it comes from somewhere. It's very
and understanding storytelling as an art form as well. It's like creating magic spells.
It's the same as science. It's a way of describing reality.
Exactly.
That we don't understand, but they understood it, and we should pay heed to what they did.
Yes.
How they described it.
So it's not about the actual words, right, or the way we interpret them. It's like, what story are they telling, or what are they pointing to, or connecting? What consciousness is it connecting to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eva, is the point of life to be happy? Or is that just a word? We talk a lot about happiness in modern society. What do we mean by that? And is it even something to strive for?
I think the meaning of happiness will keep changing as you go on this journey, as you go on an awakening journey. As we've touched on, in the beginning, it's something that you grasp for and long for, and something that you're kind of attached to. And why am I not happy? And I should be happy. And you have an idea of what happiness is. But I see that shifting. I mean, I know it's shifted in me. And happiness becomes something that is less attached to an emotional state, and is more about a joyful peace that's underneath everything. no matter what experience you're having. Because when you dismantle your idea about what being sad is, too, and you really start embracing the experience of being sad, it can be as beautiful and bring as much joy as the experience that you used to think of as happiness.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know what you mean, but I mean, it's hard, but
yeah,
I believe you.
Yeah. So it's like,
so maybe it's joy that we should be seeking more than happiness.
Yeah, and,
So,
and I mean, seek what you long for, because that will take you onward. If it's happiness that calls for you, beautiful. Follow that thread. Follow that thread, because it will take you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But be willing to continue. Be willing to also let go of your idea of what happiness is. Because otherwise, you'll just be stuck in more suffering. You'll be stuck in the idea of, I should be happy and I'm not there. Right? It's always something unattainable, something beyond you. And when you have a different experience, when you feel sad or when you feel anxious, you say, oh, I haven't done my self-mastery work enough yet. I haven't done. I should be meditating more. I should be another trap.
It's right? like trying to reach the horizon when there's always a new horizon.
Yeah.
So yeah, or maybe just embracing life, the beauty of life. Everything in life is beautiful and joyful in some sense. But
tell someone who's suffering that right now, and they will like punch you in the face.
I know, it's a tough one.
So that's why it's a path. It's a journey, and like, follow what you feel a longing for. If you long for peace, if you long for silence from all the mind chatter and the negative self-criticism, all of that, if that's what you long for, follow that thread. It will take you somewhere, and then it will change. And then you follow the next thing and the next thing.
We have, before we made this interview, we talked a little bit about another guest I had, Angelo Di Lullo.
Yeah.
And he talks about equanimity a lot, which is an interesting term in this context, because it's about feeling not the high highs and the low lows, but just being, so then happy is not the right word to describe that, because happy, I think we interpret happy as being something very, being very, we laugh and we are elated in some way, but equanimity is more like just being quietly joyful about being here and experiencing all that life has to offer, including, as you said, sadness and even anger sometimes, and knowing that it's all just, it's passing through, because everything's changing continuously. And everything's that this too shall pass, as they say. And when you realize that it's actually not as bad to be sad or to be a bit angry or anything.
And I find more and more also that saying "this too shall pass," there's a judgment in it too, right? There's like, this is not what life should be. So
well, that's true.
It's kind of a comforting.
It's true.
This too should pass.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But it does pass.
It does. it definitely does. And what I like, equanimity. Yes, I think that's kind of pointing to the same thing that I'm describing with different words. Like, it's an underlying peaceful joy, and it's there no matter what experience you're having. And I see that trick of the mind when we tell people, like, this is what you should strive for. It's equanimity, or it's happiness. It's this. Okay. Again, we set up the idea of what that is, and like, I should be there, and that means I'm not there yet. And if I'm having a different experience than equanimity, that means
I need to do something in order to reach that goal.
So when you hear that word, your mind will interpret it as a concept, right? Where you should be, and meaning you're not there yet. But more and more, it's so much sinking through the layers of experiences that you're having right now, and find that that's always been there.
It's always been there.
It's always been there.
Just have to take away the layers.
And again, we come back to that, like, direct your attention there, right?
Yeah.
So learning how to direct your attention there. And it's one of my courses. We focus solemnly on that. like how to use the force of your attention to start picking up on the experience of consciousness, for example. Because I have a little engineering brain too, which was like, how did I do it? Like, how can I take it apart? Can I make it into steps? So that's like really fine-tuning.
We have different ways of functioning, so maybe different methods work for different people.
Oh, for sure. At
any rate, it's very interesting to be here in this life. It's very interesting and it's very fascinating. That I think you can, if you come to that conclusion, it's all good in a way.
Yeah.
Because I find it so fascinating.
Yes.
I mean, even if I'm sick or anything or something bad happens, of course I get pissed off for a few minutes, but or sad or something. But then I think, wow, this can also happen. How fascinating.
Yeah. And even being pissed off is fascinating, right? Being pissed off about being sick. It's like, wow.
I can't be sick now. I have to do this and that and the other.
That reaction is fascinating experience to have.
Silly. You mentioned the brain, and the brain is a very important organ, of course.
Yeah.
But I do think it is an organ, and it's not a. I wrote a little essay about this the other day. It's not an ersatz god, I think. Something less than that. But what's your take on the brain and consciousness? What is consciousness in your mind? That's a good word in English. We don't have it in our mutual mother tongue, Swedish. Yeah. The word mind is very good to use sometimes. But anyway, consciousness. What is consciousness as you see it?
For me, I know that there are different schools about this. But for me, consciousness is not something that is created inside of the mind. I'm more of the experience that consciousness created mind. Mind is something that we can experience with, that we can interpret with, that tell stories. But beyond that, consciousness is the field that makes everything possible. Even your mind.
Do you think it's something that survives when our physical bodies die?
Yeah. And it's something that your drop of consciousness returns to.
Okay.
So it's the big ocean, and you're a drop there. You have your unique expression of consciousness in this human body. So you can have the experience of yourself as consciousness. And as soon as you have the experience of yourself as consciousness, now you can start the art of dreaming, right? Because now you can connect with other people as consciousness. You can sense the consciousness in a tree. You can sense the consciousness in your own heart, in your sex. You can sense the consciousness in the place of Teotihuacán or in a church, the Christ consciousness. You can start connecting with everything that is also made of consciousness. And you can even connect with that sense of no thing and everything beyond your human experience.
Which is a dream in many ways.
Yes.
I think more and more it is actually.
Yeah.
I think Albert Einstein said something like, not that this physical world is a dream, but that it is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. It is very persistent.
Because we all dream it.
We all dream it together, and that was what makes it so beautiful.
Yes. And there's also a dream of suffering in the world, right? And there's a so we haven't touched on that so much, but there is.
Go ahead.
There is the lies, right? There is a creation, we can call it a dream of the planet, that is very much rooted in fear. And that dream is what is dreaming you if you're not a conscious dreamer. And, this is what people talk about when they say awakening, right? And start seeing yourself as outside of that.
Okay, I have been dreamt all this time.
Yes.
I was not the dreamer, I was dreamt.
It's the movie The Matrix, right?
It is. Oh, that's such a fascinating movie.
Yeah. So it's you realize something's been feeding off of you. And that's very much, it's understanding that an idea is alive. An idea is a creation. An idea is a dream, right? I'm terrible. I'm not worthy of love. It's a dream that you give life. And if you dream it again and again and again, you give your energy to it. You feed it. And it becomes alive. And then it wants to stay alive. And it wants to live. And it wants to dream you. And it wants to be fed. And an idea wants to be spread.
Yeah.
From me to you to others. So right now, like the dream of the planet, the majority of people are being dreamt by a dream of fears. And that's why we talk about, good or bad. I mean, the forces of dark and light and all of this, why that's such a big part of our storytelling, right? In movies and books and all of that. But there is truth to it. And when you start shedding that dream of fear that's been dreaming you, you don't have to learn to love. Because again, it's where you came from. It's love is a force that is here, that's created everything, and that is inside of you. It's not something you need to learn to love yourself. No. Shed the dream of fear, and it's there. You arrive at love.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that there are two basic forces in the universe, love and fear.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I'm really...
They're definitely at play. And which one do we want to believe? Which one do we put our faith in? Which one do we feed?
Yeah, the story about the two wolves in your chest.
Yes.
It's an old story. So talked about this world and what we're seeing, how people are reacting to things, good and bad forces and all that. Where are we headed? Do you see that there is a change going on, spiritual change perhaps, or societal change, or how do you see the world in a few decades? Are we in for big changes? Or, I mean, you're not a sociologist, but you might see something from your Toltec dream perspective.
Yeah. From my perspective, it's all okay.
Yeah.
I don't have an agenda of where this needs to go or where it should be going. I have faith and trust in that whatever happens, there is learning and expansion in that. So my honest answer is I have no idea. I have no idea.
And it doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter. And I see changes, right? I see shifts. Will they be... I mean, there's been changes like we've talked about in human history, I think many, many, many times. There's been a kind of pendulum swing into different types of awareness or consciousness in different societies. And they have gone under too, right? They have decayed and been destroyed and been torn apart. And
because nothing is fixed.
Nothing is fixed. It's all a big weave or a web of, a tapestry of something that keeps moving and changing and shifting. And
every second.
Yes. And so many different forces kind of pulling and moving in different directions.
I think that was a beautiful note to end on, maybe.
Yeah.
So, Eva, where can people find out more about you and your work?
Well,
I'm sure many will be fascinated by all that you've been saying. It's been a wonderful talk. So where can they find you?
A really good place to dive into if you want to do this work is my own podcast. I have a podcast called the Uncover You podcast, where I really take people on that journey in a sense of looking at certain beliefs or looking at certain patterns and ways of taking that apart. So it's having a taste of the work, really, are you experiencing this? Then maybe look at it this way, or explore this. And then, you can find me on my website, selfmasteryandbeyond.com.
Selfmasteryandbeyond.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will put links in the description, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eva. Lovely conversation, and
Yeah.
good luck with your soul work now.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the conversation. It was very nourishing and I enjoyed it a lot.